So we're here for the Assessing Constructed Features Throughout the Park presentation. We have Beneficial Designs here, Todd, here with Beneficial Designs. Yeah, so find a seat, and thank you, Todd.
You're welcome. Thank you. So my name is Todd Ackerman, independent contractor with Beneficial Designs.
It's not. Do we want it on?
Can you hear me now? Is that better? Wow. So I'll start again. My name is Todd Ackerman, independent contractor with Beneficial Designs. Beneficial Designs is a small company owned by a disabled veteran. We're in Minden, Nevada, at the airport. If you don't know where Minden, Nevada is, it's not surprising, but we look directly at the eastern side of Lake Tahoe. So it's a tough place to go to work. I no longer live there. I live in Montana now, and this is one of the reasons why I was able to come over here for this. So we're going to talk a little bit about assessing constructed features. I'm going to talk about a few things. I'm going to talk about some trails, not a lot on trails in this aspect. So actually a little bit about Beneficial Designs. We started off as a wheelchair testing facility, and we are the only certified testing facility, I think that's roughly it, in the US now. And my boss got into trails, and that's how we got into working on the developed outdoor recreation areas. So we look at universal design. We don't look for people. We don't want to pave. We don't want people to pave the outdoor environment. We're strictly, what kind of trails do you have? What type of facilities do you have? Are they compliant? Are they not compliant? That's our whole aspect. And we look at the lack of knowledge is what's out there. When you go to a facility, when you go to a trailhead, when you go to a campsite, whatever it is there information there for you? And most of the time the answer is no. So the lack of knowledge that someone has when they get someplace. So DORAP is the Develop Outdoor Recreation Assessment Process. It is something that can be done on a cell phone, a tablet. It can be done with a little bit of the tool that's in the background, or it can just be done with the tape measure if you want, and a few other small things like a compass, not a compass, I'm sorry, but a smart level. And who can use this? The whole idea is what type of barriers are out there. Asset managers can use this information. And part of it is the law that needs to be there. And it's mostly the law that affects federal and not state. And so we're always looking at physical barriers. There's cooking surface. Is it too heavy to turn? Can you turn it? Can you not? Is there enough clear width? And is the reach range? That's the whole thing that we look at in whatever you decide to pick up. And you can make a complete inventory of all your facility using it. You can reevaluate after a while. So as an example, if you are a state facility, roughly 20% of your sites or whatever should be accessible. It's kind of like if it's the Forest Service and you have a table, every one of your tables better be an accessible table. But as a state park, you don't have to have everyone. But if you're going to replace your table, you might as well replace it with an accessible table. And we use the ABA, which is the Architectural Barrier Act. It's a law that's been in effect for about a little over 50 years, and it just affects federal. So like national parks. But we look at this as the best practice. Now, Forest Service has a lot of the same guidelines. They have a little bit different. You may already have guidelines that you follow. But in the big picture, if you're a city, a county, there are no guidelines for you unless you created your own. The ADA self-evaluation, you know, if you're an entity and you have over 50 people, you have to do some form of an evaluation. You got to have, you're supposed to do it every year, but most places do not. I mean, we can go back to the National Park Service. They're supposed to have done their trails. And on just trails, I've been to 5 national parks in the last 2 years because they don't have any of their trails done. And so they're really behind they've had 50 years to get some of their trails done. Do you have to change anything? No, you don't. You have transition plans. This is where your 50 people get into. It does help with making a transition plan. And so all of this is, the ABA, if you just look up, if you would just type in ABA, you're probably going to go to the American Bar Association. All right? So if you really want to look at what is in the ABA, if you don't know a lot about it, you want to go ADA/ABA. And then down, I think it's chapter 10, talks about the outdoor. Performing self-evaluations, you're looking at prioritize elements first, primary features, highly used. That trail that's right there at your campground or something is a whole lot more important than that backcountry. The same thing with a campsite. The one that's there right at your facility is probably a lot more important to pick up than that campsite that is down the trail that very few people are going to get to. So the ADA is in chapter 10. Like I said, it only deals with federal. Forest Service Outdoor Recreation, they have their guidelines. And so they're very, very similar. So if you're part of the Forest Service, your guidelines are going to be a little different. And if you want me to tell you the exact difference of them, I cannot. Because I don't know them. Developed areas are like viewing areas, places where you can sit, viewing scopes, probably see to get outdoor recreation access routes. They all have different requirements at a facility. A trail, and I'm going to talk briefly, a trail is one that is designed for pedestrian use. That's a trail. Now, you can have a mountain bike trail and allow pedestrians, but if it's designed as a mountain bike trail, it's different than a pedestrian trail. You got equestrian trail. That's different than a pedestrian. So you don't have, like if I have a equestrian trail, but I allow hikers, I'm going to do that assessment work as an equestrian trail, not a pedestrian trail. But if I have a trail that is pedestrian and you want to look at it, well, is this an accessible trail or not? I look at that a whole lot different than anything else. And for one thing, a trail, just so you know, if you don't know, there is no such thing as an ADA trail. It does not exist. Okay? So if you say you have an ADA trail, no, you don't. And the real quick example about that will be, because if you're going to say that, you would say, as soon as my trail went to 5%, I have handrails and edge protectors out there. And you don't want that in the outdoor environment. So the ADA stops at the trailhead. And the ABA roughly guidelines, which we take as best practice, that's where they pick up. But if you have a trail, as I said earlier, you do not have to do anything to your trail right now. It's not like, oh, I got to go change my trail. Nope, you don't have to do a thing. Typical, this would be the guidelines if you were going to construct a trail. If you're going to make a trail today, these are the guidelines you'd want to follow in your construction. Now, there are exceptions to this, but this would be the basic guidelines. And to give you an idea, the concrete, asphalt, and boards is 2%. That's the grade or the cross slope of a sidewalk. Can't be over 2, okay? So 2% is pretty flat. But a trail, if it's soil or anything else, can have a cross slope of 5%. And there's so much difference between a sidewalk and a trail. If the sidewalk follows the road, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be at 15%, and that sidewalk grade is compliant with the ADA. So tread width, a minimum of 36 inches. If you have a passing space every 1,000 feet, if it's only 36, where it's less than 60, do you have to go and do anything to your trails? Nope. Tread obstacles, now we're looking at 2 inches max if you were going to construct one. All right? You don't have to, now, if you have a trail that you want to go, well, we want to make this one accessible. We want to get people out on this who have some form of disability. Then you better look at, okay, we want to try to get rid of things that are over 2 inches. 2 inches is a lot. It really is. When you start considering a sidewalk trip is 1/4 of an inch. So there's a big difference. And now, granted, on some of this stuff it goes to 1/2. Opening's 1/2 inch. That is for somebody who is blind who has a stick. Really what it comes down to. And then you have, in boards, you can't have that opening. You see a lot, we see the opening issue on bridges where they've used wood and it separates. That's where our big, pedestrian routes or trails, outdoor recreation routes, beach access routes, they all have different requirements. But the exception there's a lot of different things. If you're building a trail, let's say, and you come into a rock formation, and by construction method, wherever you're at, okay, you're not going to bring dynamite in. You're not going to do anything crazy. If you can't change it, then you put in for an exception. It's not. But most, that's if you're building. They have to be firm and stable. That's one of the big things. We do have, our company does produce we call an RP. It measures firmness and stability. We use it a lot in playgrounds. You can use it in here, and what you're trying to do is you're figuring out, in this case, like in here, is their carpet, is it too soft for somebody especially in a wheelchair? Because now they really got to work on that. Now, the thing with the RP out on the trail, you got to take 5 readings every half mile. And very few places do it, which is fine. And I'm not sure if I have it on here, but we do the heel test. I put my heel in the ground. I can tell you if it's paved, it's pretty simple. If it's hard, firm, soft, or very soft. Very soft is like sand, and the sand rolls back in. This is what it looks like in use. It can be time consuming, but some places want it. If you have somebody or someplace that has a lot of wheelchair use, then you might want to think about it. If you don't know your ground is firm and stable. The information, brochures online, panel maps, kiosks, trailhead signs. It's where all your information can be put. From anything you pick up, especially the DORAP, if you really want it, which probably the online will be the big thing when we get to what this looks like. Constructed features, there they are. And you know, you have the bear box and the fire ring and the picnic table and the cooking surface, a bench. The middle bottom is your water and electrical, and in it's non-compliant. Someone in a wheelchair can't get to it. So these are some of the things as we go around we look for. And if you can read the one on the left, in the arm it's stamped approved. All right? And it's kind of unique because the one on the left is an unacceptable symbol. It cannot face that way. I know. I don't get it either, but according to the law, it goes the wrong way. You can't have one that faces to the left. All of them have to face to the right. Different one, we have this one. It's a parking. You have an access aisle, but there's no way to get from that parking onto the sidewalk. So these are some of what we run into. This is another one. This is actually at a rest stop. It has a picnic facility. And the ramp is inside of the parking space on the left. And the one on the right, the access aisle, has no ramp. This one, it's hard to see. This is a diagonal parking space. It says van parking. It's non-compliant. Because on a diagonal parking space, if you have them, your access aisle has to be on the passenger side. Okay? If it's straight in, now the van can back in. So that's a big difference. And we see these at diagonal parking, and it's a van access, but there's no access aisle. Here's another one where the icon is the wrong way. And this one, it's not telling you. It says this way. This trail is one way. They got the icon on the bottom, and I guess you're assuming that whole trail that way is an accessible trail. And what happens if that person gets tired? Do they not get to come back? So the bridge, the only issue with the bridge is if you look at the gaps, they're too wide. That's one of the things we're looking for when we get out and do our assessment work. They're over a half inch. Same thing here, it's a little more obvious. This one has, on this wood, they're over a half an inch, I'll tell you that much. So it becomes a trip. And the problem that people, when we look at, come back to it. This one is at in North Dakota, it's at the state park, state office. And it's like you've got a parking space that's partway into the ramp. And it's on all of them, not just one. This is just one that I happened to find. This is actually in Carson City, Nevada. It's at a casino. If you think about who goes to a casino, most of the people who go to this casino are older people, especially in Carson. These are all disabled spots. There's not one access aisle. There's no way to get from this thing across the parking lot to the casino. This is at Rocky Mountain National Park, their visitor center. And mostly is that ramp. We're looking at that ramp. So now we look at campsites. If it's a campsite, really you're looking at right next to the wall. Everything's at a big angle, so this would be a major issue if you were thinking of making this one an accessible campsite. There's no way this one could be. It's all been, you have so much erosion that to step up to the picnic table. Now the tent space could be okay. It's another one where there's an issue around the table, and probably if it's supposed to be an accessible, probably clear space. Another one, if you take a look at the table, if it's supposed to be an accessible table, well, that's not. This one is actually an accessible table. It's movable, but I think everything works on it, even though it's not the prettiest place in the world. This is an ERT, and this one actually I think is accessible. We never went inside. So outdoor constructed features. This is everything we look at. We look at, the bench, the camp shelter, the fire rings, the grill, the wood, the stove, outdoor rinsing showers, parking spaces, picnic tables, tent pad, tent platforms, trash, pretty much everything on there. And if you have anybody been to Lake Tahoe? Some. Anybody been up at Spooner and hiked up to Marlette? It's about a mile hike. It's a nice hike. You get up top, you're overlooking the lake. There is a bathroom up there. Okay, it's out in the middle of nowhere. That bathroom is a totally accessible bathroom. And it has to be. And one of the biggest things that we get into is we think accessibility only has to affect people with a wheelchair. But there are people who, have limbs, low vision, missing a lower leg. These are all people that have to still get into the bathrooms. This is a picnic site. It's an accessible table. You can't see it from this angle, except getting up to that table is possible if it was going to be a wheelchair. It's about a 5-inch lip to get up. So at least 20% of your picnic units in a picnic facility where there are more than 2 picnic units are provided. You got to have at least 20 unless you're the Forest Service. So if you have less than 2, then each one has to be. And the U.S. Forest Service, their picnic table is 100%. So you should never go to a Forest Service campground or picnic area where every table is not an accessible table. It would be surprising. You have end of access, you have the middle, and if you have a great big one, which is not really an ADA campsite, you have multiple spots that a wheelchair can be into. Camping units, outdoor space in a camping facility. Now it can be a constructed feature, an RV parking space, tent pads. We did the assessment work at Tolt McDonald in King County. And they knew they weren't right. And they did it for the purpose of getting this information so they could get money to make it right. Well, what they didn't know was all their RV spaces were the paved RV space. None of them were right, and they didn't know that at all. They knew their fire rings and they knew their water were not good, but their parking spaces, none of them were compliant. And that was kind of a surprise for them, I think. As in this case, the surface has to be firm and stable. Can't be any steeper than 2%. But for them, the width of it was not right. Camp shelters, if you have a ramp like the one on the left, okay. If the one on the bottom also has a ramp, the one on top, it can't be more than 19 inches high where that person can access in. Units in the facility, number of camping units. So if you got one that's supposed to be accessible is 1. If you got 2 to 25, 2 of them. There's a lot of places that try to leave them open until a later date or later time. Don't use this site. You can, if you're if I come in at 8 o'clock at night, no one's in there, I can normally go into an accessible campsite. But I got to leave the next day. I don't get to stay. 20% of outdoor constructed features in the public and common use areas have to serve accessible picnic units. Your outdoor recreation access routes are quite unique in what they get away with. Outdoor space developed for viewing. There are certain measurements in that viewing area that you got to follow. And, the maximum height at that lower level has to be is 32, and your minimum height is 51. So it can be higher than 51, but you can't be lower. And so it's important. You got to have clear space. You got to allow someone to be able to wheel up to it. Fire rings all have certain measurements you're looking at, and raised cooking surfaces. Showers, how high they are, where the controls are at. They all have certain measurements. If you're opening a bear box, can I get my hand in that? Most of them are. Most of the time, it's you can open them. As long as you don't have to grab, turn, and twist, you don't have to squeeze. The dumpster that you see at some campsites, they don't have to be inaccessible at all. There's no. The water height, there's a certain measurement that's where the water comes out of. 5 pounds of pressure to lift the handle. Sometimes those need to be sprayed a little bit to loosen them up. Here's a bathroom. You get to a facility, is my bathroom compliant bathroom? A bathroom will take forever to do because there's so much, unless it's just a pit toilet. Then it's pretty simple. But you still have grab bars that have to be in there. This one is non-compliant. One, because the sink is so close to the toilet. There's not enough clear space. The toilet paper dispenser on the left wall is not 12 inches above the rail, and it's supposed to be below the rail anyway. And that's the biggest issues of this one. This is supposed to be an accessible bathroom, but there's no handrail on the left. There's no toilet paper. The seat up on top is too high, so it has a lot of issues. So the developed outdoor recreation assessment process, like I said, it can be put on a phone, a tablet. Simple tools if you don't have a couple things. These are some of the tools you'll need. It tells you, this process tells you where to measure and what you need to measure. Elements, clear space, wheelchair space, operable parts, and dimensions. Those are the biggest things we're looking at. There are reach. Certain things can only be so high. A coat hook can only go so high, as an example. The reach to the controls on the sink. There are two types. You can have a front approach or a parallel. Two types of clear space to the accessible feature, and the clear space around. Clear space around on the right, they can share clear space. As in this case, where we're looking to measure the width from the edge of the feature to the nearest obstruction. That's what we're looking for. And if there's enough space there, then you're good. Clear space, select and measure the typical grade and cross slope, which we do. This can be done by standing back and squatting down. They talk about like a golfer taking a look at what you're looking at. Around a feature, grade is the top one. We look at grade when we go around, cross slope when it comes away from it. That's how we take a look at grade and cross slope in this like in this raised cooking. Length of something is always the path of travel. This is a little one. The one on top, I know you got to think about. I'm going down the trail. I turn to go to that box, whatever it is. Now that's my direction of travel, so that's my length. And then inside that is my width. So clear space can connect to or overlap. In this case, that fire ring can overlap with the table. That fire ring and raised cooking surface, the raised cooking surface and table, they can overlap as long as they follow enough clear space. Wheelchair space is required to provide clear ground space, unobstructed knee clearance, and obstructed toe clearance. If you take a look at the top picture, even there's the issue with that one is there's a lip there for that wheelchair. Most of the time, the viewing scopes, they're designed that way for somebody in a chair. I'm using a profile tool. So there are two different types of profile tools. It makes life easier. This is the one that we use. If it fits underneath the table, like in the second picture, and if I can move it the full width of this, let me go back to that. If I can move it the full width of underneath the table, then that part of that table is compliant, as long as it fits underneath the table. Okay? There's not one table out there that it fits underneath because they have a little drop down. This is 27 inches high. It's built that way. That's the width underneath the table has to be. And this is my toe clearance. This takes care of my knees and everything. So I don't have to do any measurements as long as that works. Now we do have to do some measurements for forward approach. You have to have 48 inches of forward approach clear space. Has to be 30 inches wide. This is the forest surface. It's square. Same idea though. So if that thing fits underneath the table, moves for 30 inches unobstructed, it's a compliant table. There's ours. So we have 27.8. It does all the measurements for us, so I don't have to sit there and do any measurements. That's the whole idea, to speed our process up. Structured toe space, 17 inches by 9. Reach, there's height reaches things. It showed about that. So anything into your bathroom, let's say, your coat hook has to be between 15 and 48 inches. Your light switch has to be between 15 and 48 inches. Haven't seen one at 15, but it can't be higher than 48. That's why really your sink controls can't be over 48. If you have the electric to dry your hands, that can't be over 48 inches high. Operable parts, you just can't have to require by tight gasping, pinching, or twisting. That's the biggest thing. So the water, I got to be able to push the water or open the water without grabbing and pulling it up. And it has to be able to be done with one hand. 5 pounds of pressure. We use a gauge to check it. These have a little problem. Most of the time they get pretty sticky. Also on a water, you've got to have between 11 and 12 inches in the rear so someone in a chair can roll up past it and not stop just in front of it. And a lot of times we find that it stops at the water where it comes up and they get rocks and everything behind it. Well, now it becomes non-compliant. Dimensions of a cooking surface in this case. This is the same thing required. Everything has some form of requirement. The viewing scope, the water, how high the water comes out of the shower, how high the raised area is. This one's tricky because the picture is not a good one on the right. At a bench, a clear space. It's the only thing you got to worry about at a bench is the clear space. But in the picture, it shows that that yellow part sits next to the bench. That's not true. They don't have to sit right next to the bench. That person, you take the guy on the left picture on the bottom, he could be 2-3 feet away from that bench, as long as there's clear space. He can't be on the other side, he can't be a long ways, but they don't have to sit shoulder to shoulder. They just got to have clear space that's close. The fire rings, we run into this a lot. The fire building surface, normally they're not in there. Has to be 9 inches above the ground. That's where somebody can reach in still. The reach over the fire ring can't be over 10. So the middle picture, it's over 10. The one on the right, that's way over 10. So wherever that reach is, the pivotal cooking surface, you measure from the top and from the bottom. And if it turns, you got to find where it turns. So wherever it turns, and if there's a big gap, now all of a sudden that become non-compliant now, if it gets over that reach. Tent pads, you have a 2 to 5% slope, 48 inches of clear space. Now, this is a tricky one because you put a tent out there, depending on where you put it, you might not have 48 ground space all the way around it. But the whole idea is they created an area where you can put a tent. But, I mean, does the person have to really get behind that tent all the time? No. So the surface, 2% max. These are tent pads, 5% unpaved, 19 inches high is the highest it can go. That's a transition thing for somebody in a chair. Okay, table collection. See if I can get out of this thing. Maybe. Come on, mouse. Oh, my Lord. Where's my mouse? So, if we're going to pick up a table, instead it's just showing you the picture, what we do. This is the actual thing that is the DORAP that we do. So it's a table. I can tell the location. I can type in what the location is, or maybe it has a campsite number. Maybe it's it's campsite 3. The distance from the trail, if I know it. If I don't have to worry about it. But sometimes you've got camps that are out on the trail, so maybe it's 30 feet from the trail. But if it's in a whole camping area, we're not too worried about it. Now, is it an ABA trail or a campsite, or is it a Forest Service? Different requirements for different things. See if I can get this thing down. So the first thing it asks, and this is what it looks like, is it a round table? And I can put no because you don't see too many of them. Since I got to put in, now it tells me with the red on it, it tells me what's the length of it. So now I'm going to measure it. I have to measure sometimes. So I can say it's 60. I don't have to fill these in. What's the width? I can say it's 36 or 35. Is the table height between 28 and 32? Now, that means it's higher than this. And if I say yes, it tells me it's compliant. If I put no, it's going to tell me not compliant. Okay? Is the bottom edge, let me go back to that one. Is the table height between 28 and 32? That's actually, it's supposed to be 34, not 32. I can't go in and change this one. I have to go on my original. So is the bottom edge of the table 27? If I put no, oh, it's non-compliant. It's going to come out and tell me that. Is clear space provided? Well, and it tells me the ABA is 36, the Forest Service is 48. And so I measure, so I'm measuring from that table to the nearest obstruction. And if it's yes, it's 36. Is the ground surface paved, asphalt, concrete, or boards? You know, I can put yes or no. Let's say no. Now I got to measure my grade. And I got to measure my cross slope. And I put those numbers in there. They'd ask me, what is my surface type? We'll just say it's soil. Now it asks me wheelchair clear space. It tells me where to measure. And it tells me a 48-inch minimum. So technically what we normally do, if I know I got 48, I just put 48 in there. Oh, get up here. You know, I'm not worried about that, oh, it's 56. As long as I got 48, I'm compliant. So we really don't care. I take a look, is my width here 30 inches? Do I have 30 inches of clear space underneath that thing? And if I do, okay, I'm going to put 30. Let's put 34. Is the wheelchair space paved? I mean, I could say yes if I wanted to. I can say no. Most of the time they're not. What is the grade of the wheelchair? So I got to measure my grade. All right, so I'm going to say it's 2. And what's my cross slope? I have to physically, with a smart level, I have to measure them. I have to put my smart level down and get it. And I'm going to, since it's paved, I'm going to say this is 2 also. Once again, this area says, well, what's the surface type? Well, I'm going to say it's asphalt. Now, if it asks me, do I have a tool? So, if I say, if you take a look at this, take a look at the next question, is the ground surface? Well, if I go no, oh, now I got to start, I have to do all these measurements. Okay, I got to do them all. And I'm not going to do them because I got my tool. So if I say yes, it tells me where I need to put my tool. And I say yes, oh, I'm compliant. I don't have to do all these other measurements. Because if I got to do 5 tables and I don't have my tool, it's going to be a little bit. Is the ground surface of the wheel firm and stable? I can say yes. Oh, it's compliant. Is the wheelchair clear space free of any obstructions? If I say no, oh, because like the picture of the gentleman underneath the table that had the lip, now it's not clear anymore. Are the clear space, wheelchair space free of any openings? Most of the time we don't have too many openings. Is it anchored? And that's kind of important. It's not if I say yes, it's, a lot of are not anchored. But the problem is, if it's an accessible place, they move the tables. And sometimes they move them where it's no longer clear space anymore. And then what I do is I take a location, I take a picture, I got a GPS point, and I go to the next one. And now I can go in and I can go pick something else up and just do my collection and keep going. So I could go to, if it's a fire ring. And, if it's at the same number, I'm going to go to the same number. And it's going to walk me through the steps. It gives me pictures of what I'm looking for. Because that's the biggest issue when I'm out collecting in a camping facility. Where do I measure? You know, how do I measure the height of that raised cooking that cooking surface? Well, it's got to be 9 inches on the inside. And so that's, you know, and it tells us, you know, is that 10 inches or less, the width of that? If it's over 10, it's non-compliant. Because, you know, is it 10 inches? And it's a yes or no question. Now, if for some reason you want to have all those numbers, okay, we can change it so you get to measure everything. But if you don't, you put, oh, it's less, it's 9, oh, so we're compliant, we're good, we go on. We know that one is compliant. So, and it does it for, you know, you can go and do a full RV spot. You can do a tent site, and then you pick, do I have a table, do I have this, do I have this? And so that's really what we have come up with for developing and assessing the outdoor developed areas and what we're looking at trying to do. Now, all of this, I can tell you right now, all this you can find in chapter 10. And there's a lot there. So, just so you know. Questions? It's a lot, I get. Yes, sir.
So we're a state agency, but we're in the process of bringing a lot of our sites up to ADA standard. I take it you guys develop this criteria within Survey 123?
Yep.
Okay, so how do we get access to it?
We share it with you.
Okay, excellent. Thanks.
What we would do is we'd ask you, I go back to this, you know, which one of these do you want? Because I mean, like if you go, I want the RV space, and if you have them, it's going to ask you, it's going to run through everything, and then it gets down and it asks you, does this have utilities? And if you say yes, then all the questions for those come up. Like if I got water, all my questions, you know, yeah, I know there's a couple. And then it's going to ask you questions about water. But it's all going to be that one site. So you don't have to do it all different times. Now, if you don't have those, we can go in and turn these things off. So like, oh, well, I just have a tent site. I just have, you know, picnic tables. I just have the cooking surfaces. Okay, that's all you're going to get because you don't need all the other stuff.
Okay.
So, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I guess kind of piggybacking on that comment, if like, how do you have this information? If usually you use field maps or something and develop a survey. Like, how do you use your app and have it like feed into our GIS database?
So what we do is you collect it, you send it to us, we download it, and we send it back to you. And it comes back into an Excel form. And that's actually how we put it into our GIS too. And it has all the, you know, you get pictures, you have a GPS point, so all the pictures come with it. So you'll have that picnic table, you'll have a picture of that table because you took a picture of it. You know, like I did the one in King County, I did it on my phone. And I just hit, when I get done, I just input and it sends it to the cloud and it comes into the office. And our GIS lady, she pulls it all down, does it her little thing, and then we send it out to you. So, but beyond that, I don't know the answer after that though. I'm not the GIS person. So, yes, sir.
So last year, the state of Washington made a requirement for ADA transition plans to be included in comp plan updates for cities. And that means potentially hard surface trails and even soft surface trails within city limits would be encompassed by that. Can you talk a little bit more about any of the work you do with trails kind of in more urban areas? Is there a way to use the tool to measure like the trailhead parking access, maybe the inconsistencies or deficiencies of the trail itself, or are you more focused on like,
No, we do trail assessment work.
okay,
No. So if I'm going to come and do, let's say at a trailhead in town, and it's a trail, and it doesn't matter if it's a multi-use trail or a dirt trail, and you want parking done, I would probably end up bringing this tool so I can pick up the parking spaces, because with our trail, we don't pick up parking spaces. But parking spaces at the trailhead, the ABA and the ADA, same guidelines, doesn't matter. So we would come with this, I would pick up the parking space. And that means everything in the parking space. And then once I get to the trail, now I have a cart that I use. And I pick everything up the trailhead, or I pick up everything that you would want picked up. It all depends. I've had people or entities, all we want is trail data, nothing else. Other people, we want to know where every bench is, where every water bar is, we want to know where every sign is. Okay. So we pick up everything. And then we go down the trail, we pick up the grade, the cross slope, the distance from the trailhead, surface type, surface condition, any obstructions that you want picked up. Depends on how high you want it. Alabama, we didn't pick up anything under 6 inches because they had roots throughout their park. Other places, we pick up everything under 2. Anything under 2 does get picked. So
a follow-up question to
Yep.
that. So I'm just curious, are there examples out there? That information is important, 2 ways. So, one way it's for the municipality to maybe add to their repair and maintenance list, right?
Right.
Another way, though, it's just information for disabled users to know what they're getting themselves into.
That's why we pick it up. Yep.
Do you have any examples of cities that have done a good job of, or agencies that have done a good job of getting that information out to the disabled community?
How do I put this? We don't send it out to the disabled community. We send it all out, or we tell people that we pick up stuff for everybody. So it doesn't matter if you have a disability or if you're a family that's got little ones. This is the information you need to know. Trying to think who would have stuff. Now, the problem is I don't know if what they've done with their data. That's my biggest problem. So North Dakota State Parks should have stuff. Nevada State Parks should. New York State Parks should have stuff. Now, do they? I don't know, to be quite honest. Alabama State Parks in, I think the Gulf Shore State Park in Alabama, and the state park I can't think of it. Oak Mountain has it on theirs. They should have it on their website. And so they're, we either teach you how to do it and you go do it and now it's all yours, or we do it, we give you your data, but what you do with your data, what they do with it is up to them. We hope they put it online. So,
Thank you.
I mean, even Parks Canada up around Banff should have it now. I don't know what, I can't tell you what they put out though. Mostly because not that I don't want to, I just don't know. Sorry. Any others? Yes, ma'am.
I didn't see it in the drop down. Do you do docks or fishing platforms?
We can, yes. Yeah. I don't know if we have one in there called it, but we can, there's not a lot to them, but yeah, we can. It all depends on, if they have that, do they have the bar across? Yeah. Or do they have the edge protector? A lot of them don't have the edge protector, you roll right off. But yeah. Now, I don't know if any of you are coming tomorrow. We do have a trail presentation. It's a very condensed one tomorrow. And then tomorrow also I had a couple of different tools that we do out on the trail, we use on the trail. The only problem is one of them I brought is my old one, so it looks a little different than the new one. But it does exactly the same thing. So tomorrow morning we do one on trails. We're going to talk a little bit more on trails, a lot more than what we did today. So, any other questions? And I will be here, so if you think of something, feel free. Yes, ma'am.
Are you doing any work on winter recreation?
Say that again.
Are you doing any work on winter recreation?
Not that I know of, no. The next, I can tell you, we will be back in King County at some point to pick up Cougar Mountain and Taylor Mountain, I think it is. I think those are the next two for out in King County. The other, we also have done work at Dash Point, I think, which is by Gig Harbor. And so those are the other ones. In Washington, I don't know if the state of Washington is here or not.
Yes.
I know we're working with them to buy equipment so they can start picking up their own stuff. So I have nothing else. This is it. Unless you want to see something else, but that's all I got for you.